white to color. Hello, everyone. Here we are again in the wonder of the Mossy Rock house. In the changing light of the day, as it becomes 3 o'clock, and we hang out until we get a few people showing up on the line. Hello, hello. Tell us where you're from. And if you already know us personally or know Daniel Deardorff or his work, and you want to say anything like that in the chat, it's open. I'm Judith Kate Friedman. I'm here with Audrey DeMola. I'm beaming in from the home that Daniel built. And this is on a town in the Northwest U.S., Pacific Northwest, the town of Port Townsend, originally named when it was settled by the S'Klallam Katai, S'Klallam and Chimicum people, many of descendants still actively in those tribal communities are here in our region, along with others in the Coast Salish peoples. This was a gathering place for years, this land for tribal peoples. And Daniel, to the best of his ability, made this gathering place for people interested in myth and story and the medicine in the old stories. So we're going to maybe wait just a couple of minutes to get started with a reading from the book. I'll say a few words about Daniel Deardorff, my beloved for the last many years of his life and mine. We would have had our 15th anniversary of our outlaw marriage, starting this past week. That anniversary came, and he isn't here embodied, but he's very much here in his works, in his desire for his song to keep going, for the stories to keep being told, and for the mission that he had for the Myth Singer project when he was still living, called the project called the Myth Singer Legacy Project now, and didn't used to call Legacy. So it was the Myth Singer Foundation. The mission is the same, which is restoring the wisdom of myth to culture and community. So thank you for being here. It's wonderful to see people gathering. And looks like we have Lissa from Astoria, New York in the house. We have Audrey DeMola on the dashboard from New York as well. It's Amelia from Inner Traditions. Inner Traditions is the wonderful book publisher who has embraced this book, which is on sale today at your favorite booksellers or at innertraditions.com. And it's been really wonderful to work with Amelia as an editor. It's so good that you're here for this celebrational moment. So we are all gathered because we have an interest in myth. Perhaps we have an interest in many of the other things that are on the title of this book, the other within us, the other within society, the other in the cultural conversation, the genius of deformity in myth, culture, and psyche. Who is the genius of deformity? Daniel Deardorff would start his talks often by saying a caveat or an announcement. I am not the genius of deformity. In fact, nobody has a genius. Nobody is a genius. We have a genius, as the ancients have said, as other teachers have also said. So we're looking at the genius that is in deformity, the splitting open of form, the changes that are wrought inside us in our physical, our spiritual, our intellectual, our soulful, our health, our sexuality, our identity, our culture, the moment in time, our generations, our educations, our finances, any other stripes, and especially in our expression and our arts. How do we break things open in order to, as Gaston Bachelard taught, liberate the imagination. So these are many of the themes, just touching a little bit. And this is indeed an auspicious day. Hopefully, if you are able to vote in the US, you have. And if not, you will still in the time we have left. And I have prepared a reading. I will give a brief background on Daniel, and you can also listen to the other videos for more detail. He has spent his first years as a singer and songwriter, touring as the opening act for the California rock duo Seals and Crofts for nearly a decade. And then when the music industry closed its doors due to his visible disabilities, they loved his voice and couldn't hang with really being inclusive of people with varying bodies. He became a producer of music in Seattle and put out albums for other artists as well as himself. And then when post-polio came, the whole reason for his body being different was he had poliomyelitis from the time he was 17 months. And then he had also some unfortunate experimental surgeries that left him even more twisted than the polio itself. And so over time, he still was as much his unstoppable self as he could be. And like so many of us, we figure out a way. And they say that, the waters of a river will wear away the rock. And we all know this. This is our thing that we have as animals and as humans, this resilience. And so that led him to embrace mythology and become a teacher of myth, a collaborator with Robert Bly, Martin Shaw, both of whom have commentaries in this book along with Robert Simmons. And this is the expanded 3rd edition. I'm so honored and grateful to be stewarding this work and this book. So I think we'll just have a toast to this new moment in time. May you be well. And may trickster wisdom, the leaping consciousness, which I'm about to read about, the associative alacrity of being able to move from idea to idea and difference to difference, the honoring of the broken and the whole and the broken within us, between us, among us, around us. May we honor these things now and going forward and have Daniel Deardorff's work and voice as a way to help us heal and connect. People have been jumping on and jumping off, and somebody wrote in the chat, and so it is. Yes, may it be. Okay, so I wanted to talk in this segment. Today we're having 4 live streams, and this is the 3rd. I wanted to talk about the leaping consciousness. And again, this is on sale today. The book is The Other Within, The Genius of Deformity in Myth, Culture, and Psyche by Daniel Deardorff. If you haven't yet introduced yourself in the chat, please do say hello. This is from the chapter called Dragon Smoke. And if you're reading along, it's on page 116. I'll be skipping around a little in here. Dragon Smoke, the marriage of heaven and hell. Quoting from Robert Bly, in his book Leaping Poetry, an idea with poems and translations. In many ancient works of art, we notice a long floating leap at the center of the work. That leap can be described as a leap from the conscious to the unconscious and back again. A leap from the known part of the mind to the unknown part and back to the known. A leap from the known part of the mind to the unknown part and back to the known. Powerful feeling makes the mind associate faster. And evidently, the presence of swift association makes the emotions still more alive. That's Robert Bly from his book, Leaping Poetry. Daniel Deardorff writes, connecting self to otherness, the leaping consciousness is the antithesis of one-sidedness. The wisdom of wholeheartedness, trickster wisdom, and the mythopoeic or myth-making imagination are dependent on this associative alacrity. And I'm skipping ahead here. The leaping consciousness is probably close as any post-agrarian can get to what Morris Berman calls participating consciousness. In the associative leap, we have what the mythologist Sean Kane calls the music of pattern, a polyphony with each voice, each being singing its own song or story, to quote Kane. Deardorff writes, conjoining the modern human village and the archaic bestial forest, the leaping consciousness attempts an archegestic epistrophe from the solar thunderbird to the lunar serpent. So he's sketching out the shape of the world tree, this awareness of verticality, that there's the great above, the great below, and in between the world tree from Norse mythology, or the axis mundi, as it's also referred to, the connecting of these spheres. In Norse mythology, there's a wonderful character, the trickster squirrel named Ratatoskr, which means drill tooth. And his job is to run back and forth, up and down the tree, because the lunar serpent in the roots is hurling insults up through the squirrel to the great thunderbird, solar bird, eagle in the heights, condor, depending on which part of the world mythologies you're in. But there's that one, the large winged one in the heights, receiving the insult, hurling it back down with our great alacrity movement between points of the squirrel Ratatoskr. And in Daniel's teaching, I'm going off book here, obviously, but it's other places in the book. This is the liminal place, the in-between, also the limbic system, this emotion, as Bly was just saying in that quote. So the faster all of these things go, the more involved, engaged, stirred up we get. I have to say myself, if I go too fast, I could get fried. So it's also about slowing down enough to be rooted in the roots of this great world tree. And, then looking up and knowing we can stretch heavenward for a larger view from the aerial viewpoint. So going back to the book on page 118, conjoining the modern human village and the archaic bestial forest, the leaping consciousness attempts an archegestic epistrophe from the solar thunderbird to the lunar serpent. Quoting Robert Bringhurst here, Deardorff quotes the following: no instruction is certain, no knowledge complete. If I speak for the serpent may speak for the bird. My position is that I have no position. Leaping 10,000 years and more, Robert Bringhurst opens the axial corridor between the celestial bird of cosmos and the underworld serpent of chaos. One can agree when he adds, quote, all positions are prisons and no truth is true. Because the trap of the fenced in and fixed position has been laid bare. Stay with me here. The leaping consciousness is not satisfied to make a single heroic dive to the archive of the underworld, then return up to this world and call the job done. Its achievement is more cyclical and oscillatory, like Persephone's seasonal rhythm, back and forth between the worlds repeatedly. And, or better, also from Greek mythology here, like swift Hermes, leaping between the extremes of Olympus and Hades, and through the ordinary world of Middle Earth at will. This kind of multidimensionality demands the no position of the leap. And I love this next piece, he says. The rational mind cannot come to rest upon a clear concept here. The image, which is the no position, yet stays in motion. It dances. And as Marion Woodman has said, what does not move dies. While this leaping wit is mercurial, it should not be confused with duplicitous deceit or indecisive weakness. The insider's inability to endure the crisis of extremes is best characterized as shiftless, immovable, uninspired, obtuse, and trivial, while the polyvalent trickster, by subtle contrast, is shifty, not shiftless, multifaceted, unpredictable, irrepressible, like the ever-changing surface of water. Trickster wisdom is deceptively deep. I'm going to stop there for a moment and just see what you all have to say. Looking here, the idea of genius in deformity, Lissa says, reminds me of Joshua trees whose famous gnarly branches only exist because of trauma they've experienced. That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And the idea that there is a wounded healer and that wounded healer could be the tree itself, could be any part of us, that once we face our wounding, we connect with another who also recognizes that they are not alone in being a wounded being or having had trauma of whatever kind. Yeah, that's really very beautiful. Thank you. Big fans of Ratatosker. Oh, that's Audrey. Yeah, we know. It's my favorite, Drilltooth the squirrel. Archagestic is my most beloved word, Chase writes. Yes, archagestic is one of these neologisms, a newly minted word that Daniel has in this book, and that we hope will continue to move into the lexicon, the language, the dictionary of everyone's regular use. He's taking gestic, the gesture. Gestation is also, there's movement, and also archai and archetype. And the recapitulation of an archetypal gesture becomes this new word, archagestic. Beautiful. Chiron. Okay, great. So who else has something? Let's see. We've had people today from Spain, from the UK, from the West Coast and the East Coast, from Slovenia, and probably from other nations that we don't know about, or at least other states and provinces. So I'm going to just take a moment here to answer any questions that you might have. And then we're going to come back again at 5 o'clock. So these are just tasters. We have a big event coming up on November 12th at 7 p.m. That's this coming Saturday. Juanita Roberson of Cincinnati, the author of The Underground Railroad, and I will be riffing on passages from the book, also sharing some of Daniel's own voice through his video, Calling Fire, his song about carrying story and carrying fire. We will be around a virtual story hearth, although we'll be on Zoom, but we'll be on Zoom from many places, many nations and lands together. And then Juanita and I will both also share story and connect up with different themes from the book and open it to your participation in different ways, including feeding some of the stories. So the Gift of Story link is right now in the chat. And the book is on sale today. This is its launch day, on sale at innertraditions.com and also at your favorite booksellers. You can find it in many, many places. Ask for it. And make sure you're getting the 3rd edition. If you are going especially into a bookstore that sells both new and used books, this is an expanded edition. And it's so beautiful. And it has also expanded endorsements, expanded glossary, expanded commentaries by Martin Shaw and Robert Simmons, a few extra words from myself. And if you happen to only be familiar with the very first edition of this book that came out almost 20 years ago in in 2004. That has been added to by Daniel himself. He did a whole new section that is gorgeous, that is now the first section of the whole book that was added in between the first and third editions. So you want this one. This is the fresh, new, into the world, beautiful book that I'm so proud to be helping get into people's hands, everyone who needs it. So let me just see if there's any other questions or comments. Would you read us an endorsement? Sure. I'll read a few because one of my favorite ones is very short. Well, first, let me read what Juanita said. She is a teacher and spiritual elder and wonderful writer from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we've been collaborating for several years. A lot about intersections of identity and telling truth through culture and practice collaboration, always with a spiritual aspect, but that's also very diverse. She says, I read the first sentence and was stopped in my tracks. Denial is contagious and facts are an addictive substitute for truth. I told Daniel I could spend my whole life on just this sentence. When Deardorff writes about walking among the ashes, it reminds us that there is a cost to the wisdom journey. There is a cost to freedom. This true and crooked path has gifts for us no matter the wound. With trickster wisdom through myths, he shows us the way deeper into ourselves, and by doing so, connects us more to each other. That's Juanita Roberson's endorsement. She is co-author of The Inner-Ground Railroad. John Densmore, some of you may know or remember, or now know through his writings, memoirs, blogs, commentaries. He is the author of The Seekers, The Doors, Unhinged, and Riders on the Storm, and was a percussionist drummer with the Doors way back when. He says, as I said to fellow wordsmith Michael Ventura just before I went on stage to play drums with Danny Deardorff, maybe Deardorff should be Jim Morrison's replacement. He won't be wearing leather pants, but his depth of soul is a match. And lastly, I will read another wonderful endorsement here from Miguel Rivera. This book is a well, a portal, a very carefully tended path into the mysteries of myth. It is also a map, a worthwhile one for learning how to transcend the complexities and challenges faced by individuals on entering this earth. It is a must-read for those wanting to understand boldness of heart in the face of adversity. That's Miguel Rivera, musician, mentor, translator, and teacher, his endorsement. So let's look again. Yes, the drummer from the Doors, that was John Densmore. And we also heard an endorsement from Juanita Roberson and a reading from the book, From the Other Within, The Genius of Deformity in Myth, Culture, and Psyche. If you haven't already told us where you're listening from, please add your name if you can to the chat. We'd love to know. And come to our event on November 12th, this coming Saturday night, 7 p.m. And we'll be discussing things more in depth and also have some actual storytelling, story sharing, as well as riffing on the themes and the stories and feeding the stories with each other. Because we'll be on Zoom rather than on this platform. So we'll have much more interactivity, voice to voice as well. We'll be able to see each other. So I think that's it for now. We'll be back at 5 o'clock Pacific, which is just when the polls close in the US, November 8th. Please do vote if you can. We need to just have everyone's voice be heard. Everyone's voice be heard. See you soon.